Welcome to Deep Dive Dialogue. Our topic for discussion today is advances in acute myeloid leukemia, diagnosis, and MRD assessment. Leukemia is a type of cancer that originates in blood forming tissues, notably the bone marrow, leading to overproduction of abnormal white blood cells. These cancerous cells hinder the body's ability to fight infections, impair the production of red blood cell and platelets, and therefore cause anemia, bruising, and fatigue. We have with us today Dr. Astha Gupta. She is Additional Director and Head of Hematopathology and Molecular Oncology at Fortis Memorial Research Institute. Welcome, Dr. Astha.
Thank you.
So, my first question to you is what is acute myeloid leukemia and what are the most common genetic mutations and cytogenetics abnormalities found in acute myeloid leukemia patients?
So, acute myeloid leukemia, if we decipher by the name, acute means it is sudden in onset with a shorter duration of complaint. Myeloid means the myeloid lineages are being affected in the bone marrow, and leukemia is the involvement of peripheral blood and bone marrow by these abnormal cells. So, when there is an increase in myeloblast in the peripheral blood and the bone marrow, which is defined as more than equal to 20%, then we diagnose this case as an acute myeloid leukemia. So acute myeloid leukemia for cytogenetic and molecular abnormalities, after making the diagnosis of acute myeloid leukemia, the cytogenetic abnormalities are detected by karyotyping and FISH studies. It has been found that approximately 50% of these cases have normal karyotype. That means they have no cytogenetic abnormalities or just a deletion of Y. But that is not considered as a cytogenetic abnormality as such in AML. The rest of the 50% cases, amongst them, the most common abnormality which has been found is the adverse unfavorable cytogenetic abnormality, which is usually deletion 5 or monosomy 5, deletion 7q or monosomy 7. And amongst the others, these adverse cytogenetic features, they comprise approximately 20 to 30% of all AMLs. And the other favorable translocations like a translocation 821, inversion 16, translocation 15, 17, which is APML, they comprise approximately 5 to 10% of the cases of AML. Because the 50% of all the AMLs were cytogenetically normal, so further methodologies they came into picture, and there was a search for finding of other driver mutations, and by molecular methodologies like NGS, PCRs, more molecular mutations were identified. And amongst the molecular mutations, the NPM1 comprises the most common molecular abnormality. However, with the NGS advancing very rapidly, actually, so more and more driver mutations and molecular mutations are being identified. But currently, as of now, NPM1 is the most common molecular abnormality in AML.
Okay. So, what are the conventional diagnostic tools used for detecting AML and how do they contribute to accurately diagnosing the disease?
So for conventional diagnosis of AML, CBC, peripheral smear, bone marrow examination, they remain the primary diagnostic tools. And then if we once diagnose that it is a leukemia, then immunophenotyping by flow cytometry is the next most important step to identify whether it is AML, ALL, to differentiate. So CBC, peripheral smear, and bone marrow is basically to identify the blast by morphology, because still WHO, it characterizes leukemia by the presence of blast which is more than equal to 20% by morphology. It does not advocate the identification of the percentage by any other methodology. So that is the first step to identify the blast. And in morphology, one very important thing for AML is that if we can see or presence of OR rods. So if there is presence of OR rod, then we can say that this is an abnormal myeloblast and my AML is definitely there. yes, by flow cytometry, we have to look whether there is any other abnormal component of like B or like mixed phenotype acute leukemia. But yes, morphology is very important to identify the blast, to enumerate the blast, then to identify if there is presence of OR rod. In APMLs, it is because it is APML is an emergency, it is a subtype of AML and it is an emergency situation. So by morphology, if we can see the characteristic abnormal promyelocytes, the presence of Faggot cells, then we can straight away inform the clinician that yes, this the provisional or the most tentative diagnosis is APML, so that they can start the treatment as soon as possible. Then flow cytometry is the gold standard for identification of phenotype, and by flow cytometry we will identify whether it is acute myeloid leukemia. We will identify whether there is another component and whether it becomes mixed phenotype acute leukemia. Like if it is AML with B blast, it is MPAL B myeloid. If it is AML with T blast, it becomes MPAL T myeloid. And even for subcategorization of AMLs, like if there is an AML with monocytic component, that is best determined by flow cytometry along with the morphology. We cannot forget that. And if there is APML, then there are characteristic phenotype findings on flow cytometry, megakaryoblastic type of AML. So yes, amongst the convention, now flow cytometry has become the conventional tool for diagnosis of AML.
All right. So that's good to know. So we have definitely now the NGS coming up. So these are, I think, the novel diagnostic soon. And what do you think that NGS and advanced molecular testing, how do they improve the detection of AML?
Yeah. So AML is a heterogeneous disease. It's a very heterogeneous, genetically very heterogeneous disease. And over so many years, it has been identified that with the conventional 3+7 induction chemotherapy and HiDAC consolidation chemotherapy, many patients were again and again relapsing, or they were refractory to treatment. So to understand this disease further, this heterogeneity came into picture because we had these new upcoming tools like NGS and other molecular technologies. They helped us to identify more and more driver mutations. So driver mutations like NPM1, FLT3, IDH1, IDH2, NRAS, KRAS, there are several driver mutations which are responsible for causing the genetic heterogeneity and causing the tumor cells to proliferate and progress. And some of them may be resistant to therapy. Now, the current WHO, which is the 5th edition 2022 WHO, it has basically defined, it has involved genetics as a major role in diagnosis and classification of AML. There is one straightaway entity which is AML with defined genetic abnormalities. Now this entity is why it is important, because even with the blast less than 20%, and if these defining genetic abnormalities are present, so the diagnosis of AML will be made even with blast less than 20%. So this comprise of translocation 821, inversion 16, then there will be PML RARA, then there are, it's a long list. And how did we come to this classification or involvement of all these is because of NGS and the current molecular techniques. By that only we could identify, and when the patients were having these genetic abnormality like NPM1 is a molecular abnormality identified. Now we can identify by PCR also because it is a known mutation, but initially it was identified on the basis of NGS only. And when these patients whose blast is not crossing 20%, they had NPM1 mutation, they very rapidly progressed, and if they were not treated initially as AML, they very rapidly progressed as AML only. So it was identified, yes, such cases even with blast less than 20% should be taken as AML and should be treated upfront like AML only. So there the next generation sequencing has played a very important role. Then for identification of high risk AMLs like TP53 mutations, AML with TP53 mutations, they are very high risk, resistant to therapy. So if we know at the time of diagnosis only that there is TP53 mutation, we can counsel the patient accordingly. We can counsel the patient for transplant, and even with transplant currently the studies are still going on, but the prognosis is not very good. But so we can it is very good for the patient to know what kind of disease he has and what kind of strategy a clinician can make to treat the patient. Then targeted therapy for targeted therapies like precision medicine, targeted therapies are coming up. FLT3 in AML, IDH1 in AML. So by identification of these mutations by NGS, the targeted therapies have been developed. So we have a targeted therapy for FLT3, sorafenib. We have a targeted therapy for IDH, and more as more and more mutations will be identified, more and more targeted therapies can be developed, and which will help for which will help for better treatment of the patient and better survival of the patients. So in this way, and for risk stratification, again, NGS has been involved, or because of the identification of these mutations, they have been involved in the risk stratification of AML. So it is definitely playing a very, very important role along with the conventional tools to make a proper diagnosis, proper prognosis, proper risk stratification of the patients. So that is how it is very useful.
Yeah. And my next question is, how do you currently assess minimal residual disease in AML, and what are the most reliable methods?
Yeah. So MRD is now being defined as measurable residual disease. So it has been redefined, renamed as measurable residual disease. The reason is very logical, because this is what we can measure. We don't know whether there is very, very less than sensitivity, very small clones still present in the marrow or in the patient, and which can relapse later on. So this is measurable. And currently we are detecting MRD by flow cytometry for AML. And recently we have acquired the NGS platform from Thermogenexis, and we intend to do molecular MRD as well by NGS, and so that we can have a comprehensive approach for measurable residual disease. Currently we are doing it by flow cytometry. We have a 8-color flow cytometer. We have currently 12-color cytometer, and it is best to analyze AML MRD by 12-color cytometer so that more markers can be seen together, and a better approach for understanding how the maturation happens. So if we can more colors in one tube, we can identify better maturation, and we can identify the difference from this pattern, and we can identify the residual disease in a better way.
Right.
So currently we are doing it by flow MRD.
Right. And considering the rapid advancements in MRD detection technology, including machine learning and new flow cytometry innovation, what emerging tools do you find most promising for improving MRD assessment in AML, and how might they impact future clinical practice?
Yes. So for future MRD analysis, flow cytometry along with molecular, which is NGS based MRD, is the way to go ahead. Machine learning will be very helpful, because if we have database for normal samples, how do they behave, more and more healthy population database for flow cytometry, for molecular, we will be able to know that what is the pattern observed in normal people, and that database can help us to identify what is the deviation from this normal. And when there is a deviation from this normal, we know that this is that minimal residual disease which is present in the patient. So in this pattern, together both the flow cytometry for MRD and molecular NGS based MRD is very important. As the technology advance in flow cytometry, the sensitivity is also improving because now the flow cytometers can acquire as high as 5 million, like 50 lakh cells. So when we can acquire and analyze more and more cells, our sensitivity is again improving. So this is also an advancement in the technology, where improvement in sensitivity will help us to identify the MRD in a better way. And even one thing is very important, that it is important for AML MRDs that a consensus panel should be created, or it is very much required that there should be a consensus panel, there should be a database for the normal patients, and there should be a thorough discussion which is required for identification of MRD in AML. This is a very important because of this heterogeneity. Even if flow MRD is negative, then molecular MRD has to be seen whether there is any residual molecular mutation present. If molecular MRD is negative, but a flow MRD should always be seen, because if there is any phenotypic abnormality is still present in the patient. So combining the two things, creating more and more consensus, identifying more mutations, more phenotypic abnormalities, all these things together, and machine learning, again the database creation, that will help us to identify and better. It's very important because when a transplant patient relapses, we have seen recently 2 patients relapsing after 2 years, 1.5 years of transplant. They were doing very well, but now they have relapsed. So the cause is not yet known why they relapsed. Everything went fine. So more and more things are coming up, and I think it will give a better clue to understanding such patients in future.
Thank you once again, Dr. Asta, for being part of this important conversation. Together, I think we can make and move closer to future where leukemia would no longer be a threat. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manisha. I'll really like to thank Next Edge Precision Medicine for giving me this opportunity. I was looking forward to this, and so generous of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.